Todd Hay. You serve as a regional vice president and you're based out in Newark, New Jersey office. You're responsible for client services and business development efforts for Northern New Jersey, New York City, and New York State in general, as well as New England. You manage the success and growth of the East Hanover, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, and a bunch of cities. I'm not going to go through all of them, but apparently you've had more than 30 years career as a civil engineer, project manager, and principal. You're currently, working for Pennoni Engineering. Your work included, a plethora of municipal, county transportation, water and wastewater utilities, traffic and recreation projects, K-12 projects, college, university, solar, and various private and public design and design build projects within your region. Well, thank you for joining us today for this session, for accepting our invitation. A question that I'm going to start with. Which one is the closest to your heart? Working as a civil engineer, or just managing the show, growing the business, or being a project manager, running projects?
Oh, I wanted to be a civil engineer since I was 18 years of age, so I'd probably say civil engineer. Almost not trying to give away my age, but nearly. It was a dream, 35 years in the making. So,
why did you choose civil engineering? What got you into it?
Really, with civil engineering's it's interesting, obviously, in designing and then also doing construction management or construction services with respect to, just build of structures, the build environment, whether it's vertical or horizontal. I was just very intrigued with the fact that someone gives you a project and there are concerns, there's problems, and you're solving them. So I'd say, being a civil engineer, I enjoy solving problems and solving not just my clients' problems, but then also my internal staff's problems when they have problems that arise, so we can bring the best quality project, to fruition.
Do you still do so till today, or you're focusing more on the business aspect of things?
No, I actually do some engineering. I serve as principal on several projects. I also do some forensic work as well, for private and public clients. So I am still practicing. It obviously, as time has dragged on, I've delegated a lot of the more of the design functions to, but I do enjoy still, doing the work. I certainly enjoy the meetings. I probably do more work with meetings and listening to people's problems and trying to solve them, whether it would be with the clients or with the public, or even with the staff. But I do enjoy the work still as a civil engineer.
I'm going through bio here, and I could read that you also pretty much served over 30 municipalities, 10 counties, and 10 public school districts, and on-call engineer. You got something for the public sector? You like it?
I do. I think it's a little bit more intimate, to be honest with you, especially when you're working with local or county groups. And the reason being is that you really get to listen, because as engineers, we need to listen to people's issues and concerns and then find ways to relate of how we may have solved on other projects their issues. And then, get them to understand that, we can bring to the table the knowledge and the where-how to solve their issues, because every issue, to be honest with you, is unique with a project and what have you that comes up. So I really do enjoy, working with the public. I enjoy educating the public on the local and county front. I'd also say on the federal front, I enjoy the projects because they're a little bit more straightforward, and they're also a little bit more far-flung in terms of the unique issues that we encounter when we do those types of projects.
Who has more challenges and issues these days, public or private projects?
I would probably say, when you look at it, probably the public projects probably have more issues. And the reason being is that, with projects that come up, really the big thing that clients are looking for is an on-time and on-budget project. So the timing of things is where there's a little bit of a challenge because some clients have some very unique and very interesting timelines that they want to meet. So I find that more of a challenge. I find that more of a little bit more complex. Certainly with public projects, we have to go through layers of approvals as well, whether it be not just the constituents that we're serving, but the general public, which the constituents serve, is something that we have to deal with. So I find public projects a lot more difficult because of the fact that you have to go through layers of approvals to bring a project to fruition.
And who has, budget-wise, who has better budgets for more reasonable budgets for the kind of requirements they're asking for, public or private?
Most certainly, I would say that the private clients do. I mean, the public clients, they do have some unique budgetary constraints and what have you with soft costs, which is the type of work that we do. I don't know if there's an understanding of the fact that, if you're trying to meet their deadlines, we need to get paid more. So, but I will say that, our private clients have been very, very, very giving in terms of, and very understanding too. If when you hook up with the right client and you have a meeting and you start a project, they understand what the limitations are on projects and the assumptions and exclusions that we put into our proposals.
What's most challenging to you when you're on one of these projects? When it's because, I'm an engineer as well. I haven't practiced engineering for a while. But mostly on the commercial side of things. I can't claim to be in engineering anymore. But again, it's when you're a civil engineer, and I'm kind of projecting here. When you're a civil engineer and you're onto a project and you have certain deadlines and having a restricted budget kind of limits your imagination, limits your creativity side of things, right? How much options you have at hand. Is that something you also face with the public sector, that they want everything at once, but then they have very limited budget, and then you have to go through and navigate through what's possible?
We find that and again, that's why those projects are a little bit more, I want to say, complicated, because you have a set budget, you have some targets that you need to meet that your constituents want that you're working for, but on the same end, they have to also get public acceptance of the project. And when we go to public meetings to talk about the project, sometimes there's changes that need to be made, and we need to make those at the last minute. And those do affect, obviously, our budget, and those affect our time constraints. But, again, when we do local and county work, even as well as federal work, more on the local county side, we're really working for the local folks. And when they speak and they have their suggestions, we take those seriously. And because they may have issues of noise, they may have issues of traffic. When let's say, for instance, we're doing a horizontal project, we're doing, like, let's say, for instance, a streetscape, or if we're doing maybe even a project that happens to deal with, let's say, traffic signal, there are certain things that we have to consider, not just in the design, but during the construction. And some of those things, if they're not brought to our client, we haven't thought about it. We have to integrate those into the project.
Where's their head at these days, the public institutions or organizations that you guys are taking projects and delivering projects for? Is it transportation? Is it waste management? Is it sustainability? Where's the focus? What are you feeling these days?
I think a lot of it is in infrastructure. I mean, as you probably know, a lot of money has been doled out to state entities, county entities, as well as local entities. And we're seeing that, at least in my region, a lot of the growth is simply in the infrastructure. We are seeing a major growth in renewable energy, whether it be, your typical electric vehicle charging stations. Solar is coming back and being a little bit more popular. Also battery storage, and then wind energy as well. There's a lot of interest in wind energy in the Northeast. So we're seeing that is the focal points right now and the trends that are going with projects. And we're trying to get involved in those types of projects to help our clients out because we can bring unique solutions to the table that maybe they haven't thought about. And they're challenged. They are a challenge with some of those types of projects.
When you say solar is coming back, did it just is it a cycle that it became popular at one point in time, then it for some reason lost interest, and now it's back?
Yeah, there a lot of tax credits and what have you are starting to come back in certain states, at least in the Northeast that we're seeing. I mean, in other states of the country, obviously, it's very easy to go ahead and build solar, but in the Northeast, there's a lot of restrictions on a lot of renewable energy sites. It's just starting to open up now over the last couple of years, and of course, there's a lot of mandates, as you know. For instance, there happens to be mandates that have come to fruition in places like New York City with Local Law 97, where you need to find ways to reduce your emissions to a net of zero, and therefore you need to install and consider renewable energy techniques to go ahead and meet those policies. So that's just one example, but I'll tell you, in other states, they are being very pragmatic, and we're also seeing issues as well with electrification, where some cities are starting to consider more electrification than they are, and trying to get away from fossil fuel generations such as natural gas and what have you. So it's an interesting time. There's an interesting time, and there's definitely a demand for those types of projects right now.
You've been in practice for 30 plus years now. Uh, Talk to us. How did this change? How did the practice, the civil engineering in particular, change over the past 30 years?
Well, with the advent of computer-aided design, CAD, certainly that's probably the first and foremost the biggest change in our industry. And as you well know, that has been integrated with a number of different disciplines. So now you have all-encompassing programs that actually integrate all of the various disciplines under one house. Whether you're building a horizontal project or a vertical project, that's probably the biggest accomplishment that I've seen over the last 30 years. I mean, I remember while working on a computer system where it was as big as a dining room table, and I'd have to sit there with 3 different screens and do a computer design, but it didn't have the functionality to actually, do portions of the design for you. It was more or less the drafting tool than anything else. So that's certainly evolved throughout the last 30 years.
Uh, you run and manage large scale site development projects, and I'm sure you come across a lot of challenges and hurdles while doing so. So can you talk to us about the key challenges that you typically come across, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, a lot of the challenges that we're seeing this day are in the environmental end of things. I mean, we'll see, for instance, that a lot of states have instituted regulations concerning your floodplains, wetlands. That certainly has gotten a lot more difficult. Stormwater, as a civil engineer, will say that stormwater is obviously the key to civil engineer success in terms of understanding stormwater management, runoff, how to take care of it, and make sure that it's not degrading the environment, and it's basically you're adding value to your clients with doing projects that could control runoff. So we've seen a lot more institutional controls in many states. For instance, we've seen controls that have promulgated from places like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and have started to go into the northern states of New England, New York. And again, this stormwater runoff being a major concentration of design for civil engineers in the space that I'm in, both horizontal and vertical, that has been certainly a challenge. And it's definitely been something that we've seen more and more interest in, and more public interest in, rather than our clients in terms of managing it.
Why? Is it because of the how much more we know about global warming now, or we're taking it more serious, or no, it's just fact of things like dealing with natural disasters, aftermath, and stormwater and all that stuff? Is it because of the how much we educated pretty much the population of the fact that there's probably a global warming uh, kind of wave forming out there, and that we need to kind of weather it in the coming of the years? Is that the reason?
Reason is, I mean, you got a twofold thing. One is you have a lot of social media generation about the subject, about the fact that storms have gotten a lot more tense, a lot more frequent. And, you've seen that in areas such as, like, for instance, in Florida. You've seen that in areas like in New York. I mean, with Superstorm Sandy that hit and ravaged the New York area, as well as pretty much a good portion of the eastern seaboard. There's been a lot more awareness, and obviously bureaucrats, as well as working with folks like myself, have established more, I want to say, stringent regulations to make sure that the impacts felt flooding as well as from stormwater are put in check. And there's also interest in terms of, going ahead and preserving natural resources as well. A lot of folks are saying, well, there's deforestation. You're seeing more and more, I want to say, impervious surfaces, more and more vehicle surfaces. Those things are being put in check as well now, with a lot of local changes, at least at the local level, with reducing the amount of impervious area and finding ways to go ahead and control stormwater runoff at the source. So we've seen a lot of that, but a lot of that, again, is examples of what's in the media, but what's actually happened within the last 10 to 15 years. And it's caused a lot of changes in regulations, and we've seen that in multi-state.
You think it's going to continue to be so the case for the coming years, or is it going to just also weather off and die as an initiative that it continue to utilize as much as possible of these resources?
I think where we're going to probably see more regulation, we might even start to see it at the federal level. Certainly if we get a hit with a few more storms, you might see a lot more checks and balances put in, to go ahead and regulate development, what have you. And then, of course, that makes it more difficult for us as civil engineers to solve the problem. Of course, as you know, when you put more regulation in, it costs more money for both our public and our private clients. So that's something that, we have to educate our clients with, and we obviously have to do that when legislation is being looked at. I've done that in New Jersey, and then part of that, and looked at finding ways to find a healthy balance between the builders and between the public and the public authorities, to make sure that we're going ahead and we're managing the issues, the environmental issues, but we're also not contributing to the degradation of the environment.
How efficient are we? You brought a really good point here, which is, how do you spend the money, right? And because obviously, more sustainable you go, the more regulations you have, things becomes really costly. How efficient are we today in running projects and spending the money where we need to, especially in the public sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about some of the things that we're doing these days with respect to when we start out with a project as a civil engineer. I would say most of our projects, we're using a lot more advanced survey techniques than we ever used before. Whether it be a horizontal or vertical project, you're now finding that scanning is a big thing. 3D dimensional scanning, as opposed to your conventional surveying that's being used, and that's contributing to speeding up the product, as well as bringing even more accuracy to the project. When you're using those types of techniques, so the survey end of things is certainly helping out, and it's creating less of a headache for us as civil engineers. But of course, again, even though we're seeing the technologies helping us out on that end, we're seeing a lot more regulations that we have to deal with, whether it be at the state, county, or the local level.